Welcome into LCPioneers.com live, presented by PiosSWIM, as we keep you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from throughout our Lewis and Clark College community. We do so twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I appreciate you joining us on Facebook, on Twitter, also on our YouTube channel, and at LCPioneers.com. Certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us for this week's show. Hi, everyone. I am Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark. We are the Pioneers based out of Oregon and members of NCAA Division III. We have 19 intercollegiate athletics programs competing in the Northwest Conference, a 9-institution conference that spans Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington, and all competing at the NCAA Division III level, which is the largest division of the NCAA, over 430 institutions competing at that level. So a chance for our student athletes to compete on the national stage, and then certainly with Lewis and Clark's overseas study program and other aspects of the student experience, a chance for our student athletes and students alike to get that global education. We do the show, like I said, twice a week, and typically we have live interviews in both of our slots on each show. However, today we're going to bring back an interview from last week. We talked to the junior of men's swimming, Eric Norman. We'll talk to Eric again, as we did a week ago, about what the excitement is behind having a full Lewis and Clark swimming season, as the 2020-21 season was just a spring only, and no NWC championships, no conference championships, which is a big deal in the realm of swimming. But after that, around 11:55 a.m. Pacific time today, we will talk to Angelina Peterson live, senior for Lewis and Clark women's soccer. They are having quite the season so far, especially the home schedule. They've been very good defensively. They've had 5 shutout wins. As far as all of their wins in the last 5 games have been shutout victories. Pretty impressive what they've been able to do, and they'll have 2 more games coming up on Thursday and Sunday this week. We invite you to get in touch with the program. You can do so, questions and comments in our chat on all these platforms, Facebook, Twitch. If you want to check us out on YouTube, you can ask questions in the chat on those platforms, or you can always email us to sports@lclark.edu, and we'll invite you to check out our website too, lcpioneers.com. That is the place to go for all of the latest information about Lewis and Clark athletics, including this week's game schedule. It is a home football week, so we're going to see Lewis and Clark football at home for the first time since the 18th of September. They're going to take on Pacific Lutheran in the home opener of Northwest Conference play. So that's pretty exciting for the Lewis and Clark Pioneers. They will be back on campus starting on Saturday. And invite you to check out your tickets. At the very top, you can see a tickets link. Go to lcpioneers.com/tickets, because we do have ticket sales available for that game coming up on Saturday. Also, home soccer on Thursday. The Lewis and Clark women's soccer team, of which Angelina Peterson is a member, will play 6 o'clock on Thursday night at Griswold Stadium against Willamette. And then home volleyball again. It's a very fun schedule if you like consecutive games at home for Lewis and Clark volleyball, because the Pioneers are home for 8 straight. And we've played 4 of them so far. So on Friday and Saturday night, Lewis and Clark will take on Northwest Conference leader Whitworth, and then we'll host Whitman on Saturday. And of course, the football game, as I mentioned, is on Saturday. We also have postseason golf coming up for both the men's and women's team, as they will be at the Northwest Conference Fall Classic. And congratulations again to Cameron Ford, back-to-back Northwest Conference Student Athlete of the Week awards for women's golf, those stemming from 2 weeks ago, and then last week, the tournaments that ended a couple of weekends back was why Cameron was named back-to-back. And then also Celestia Rifles, who is the Lewis and Clark forward who scored all 3 of the Pioneers' goals this past weekend, was named Northwest Conference Offensive Women's Soccer Student Athlete of the Week. You can read all of those at lcpioneers.com. And of course, please sign up for our newsletter. You can do so by going to lcpioneers.com/newsletter. That is Pioneers Weekly, Lewis and Clark Pioneers news delivered to your inbox on a weekly basis. It'll have schedules, Pioneers of the Week. You can even watch past episodes of this show, lcpioneers.com live. From that link, go to lcpioneers.com/newsletter for more information. All right, we are going to play back our interview from last week. Eric Norman was our guest. We had a chance to talk to the Pioneers swimming junior about what the pandemic year was like, certainly with the schedule, kind of a half schedule, basically. They played, or competed, I should say, against some of the other teams from Oregon in the Northwest Conference, where there was no conference championship, and also get an idea of what it's like to go into a new year with a new coaching staff, but also as a team captain. So just some of the things that we discussed. we bring you Eric Norman now, our interview with Eric from last week on lcpioneers.com live. Talk to a junior from Lewis and Clark men's swimming. We're proud and eager to welcome in Eric Norman to the show. Eric, it's good to see you. It's good to have somebody back live with us on the show because it's been far too long since we've had a chance to talk to a student athlete or anyone from Lewis and Clark with the show. So thanks for being our first guest out of this break that we've had. And it's kind of timely, right? Because your team has now started practice. How does it feel to get back into the swing of things with some fall practices right now?
Right. Yeah. And also, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate being here. But yeah, being back in the water, being back at practice is such a relief, considering also we had COVID last year. So practices were always here and there, like every so often, maybe like a little bit of water training, like once an hour or something. But this year we're back full throttle, back in the weight room, back doing doubles, 2-hour practices are back in full swing. So yeah, it feels really good to get back to training and getting back in shape.
And we're going to have some things to talk about too with a new head coach for the program. We'll talk about Mario Martins in just a bit, as well as kind of what it's like to shift from being underclassmen to now being an upperclassman with the program and some of the things that you've seen. But I always like the origin story when we have guests on lcpioneers.com live. You come to the Pacific Northwest from Ohio, so let's find out why you chose Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually, when I applied to Lewis and Clark, I was kind of like on a whim. I was like, okay, I'm probably going to stay on the East Coast, but for the heck of it, let's just apply to a West Coast school. So during the summer, actually, before my senior year, I think, or during my senior year, I applied to be a Compass Scholar for Lewis and Clark, and I was selected. So then they flew me out. I got to be a part of the Compass Scholars program. And while I was here, I also got to meet some of the staffing that was still here with Chris Fonts and got to meet some of the team. And kind of from there, just immediately knew I had to be here. Love the environment. I love the BCMB program that they talked about here. Love the swim team, location. It just, everything in writing and everything, it just looked so nice on paper. So I knew it was the one.
Well, and it's great to have you here. And I have to give you some credit because the conference championship, your first one that you ran back in 2020 was relevant to me because that was the first conference championship I'd ever been to for a swim program. I had never been to this event, but I had heard for the couple of years prior that I'd been at Lewis and Clark how big of a deal this was. Give me an idea of what the atmosphere is like at the conference swim meets, but also just how you felt with an all-conference performance in your first opportunity to compete at the championships.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, conference is our big end of season meet. We all taper, we all shave down, we all wear our super fast tech suits. This is the make or break meet, in my opinion. We have all the teams from the conference competing at the same pool. You swim at Federal Way, which is, from what I've experienced, is such a great pool. Got nice water, nice diving blocks. It's a really fast pool to swim in, and it's so hype. Everything is, you've built up so much energy and so much, you've trained so hard for this moment, and it all leads up to that one meet, and people are excited, people are cheering. It's a great meet to be a part of, and conference. Yeah.
So you go through there, right? And you set some school records, right? You're part of a relay team that set one, but also the 200 backstroke. What's it take in a typical collegiate swim season to be able to get to the point where you're in position to break those records, whether it's late in the season or at a conference championship?
Right. I like to think that swimming, as much as it is physical, it is also absolutely a very mental sport. You're coming in twice a day on a lot of days of the week. You got to lift weights. Swim practices are pretty grueling. In 2 hours, you have to fit in a lot of yardage, and you can show for the practices and you can do the workouts. But it really matters about how you're taking your training. You have to take it very seriously. If you get a set, you have to swim with intent. I think that's the most important part for me. Was I always have to have a goal every time I go into a set, making sure that I am getting something out of it. And I feel like, making sure that you swim with intent and making sure that you're on track.
Eric Norman's our guest on lcpioneers.com live. You can join us Tuesday and Thursdays, 11:30 a.m. To hear from student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from our Lewis and Clark College community. We heard you say biochemistry and molecular biology was the academic path that you chose. Give me an idea, what was it about that program? And over the first 2 years of that program, what have been some of the highlights for you?
Right. Yeah. So when I came here, they were talking about the curriculum. One of my favorite parts was being able to do undergraduate research with professors on campus and having a close-knit environment with other students. I feel like that's super critical, especially in something that's kind of intense like biochemistry and molecular biology. Getting lab experience is invaluable. Having students around you that are going through the same struggles as you is invaluable. Being able to bounce ideas off with my professors and with my fellow students has been, again, invaluable. I feel like that's really helped me be able to get to where I am today with BCMB, and I'm still in love with it. I'm still keeping on track with it, and I plan to keep on going forward with it.
And give me an idea too, as you transition right into this junior year. I always get the impression that this is kind of when the classes start getting really fun, right? You get kind of in the crux of the major. Do you have a class that in the first couple of weeks of fall semester has really stood out, or maybe something that's on the forecast? Give us an idea of what that looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big one that comes to mind is definitely molecular biology with Sharon Turgo. I'm in the lab section and I'm also in the lecture section. I feel like being a part of a biochemistry molecular biology major, you kind of going into it thinking, I want to learn about molecules. I want to learn about biological processes at a molecular level. And molecular biology really captures the essence of what molecular biology is. So it's been really, really interesting so far. Just had my first midterm. I'm also in the lab section, and we're doing some really cool things with manipulating DNA, and it's super cool. It's kind of what I've been waiting for, in my opinion.
Do you have an idea then what kind of the path forward is? Maybe professions or even opportunities for internships, right? Like things you maybe want to start looking at towards your graduation, which is, just over a year and a half away at this stage.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I'm halfway, but still not entirely sure. Healthcare has always been a really important thing to me. I've always been really passionate about LGBT and Native American health disparities. Maybe I'm thinking about going to healthcare in some way, trying to build up the communities in those areas. Also recently, been getting really into like research or maybe even like forensic pathology. I think is also super interesting. Of course, I'm going to have to get some experiences in those, but I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm still really looking into healthcare and hopefully making something meaningful out of it.
Oh, I've long said that one of my favorite things about Lewis and Clark students in general, but including student athletes, is folks come to Lewis and Clark and tend to find professions that have an impact on people. And it sounds like that's certainly kind of the direction that you want to go. So maybe we'll have you on again toward the tail end of next year, and we'll have a chance to kind of hear where you're going to wind up. Let's focus back on swimming then. I mentioned the coaching change. What's it like to go through a coaching change, and what are some of the things that you've enjoyed so far with the first couple of weeks of practice under a new head coach?
Right, yeah. Oh, we actually have two new leadership figures in the pool this year. We've got Marilla Martins, he's our head coach, and we also have Caitlin Denise, she is our assistant coach. And both have been phenomenal so far. You can tell that they bring so much passion and so much enthusiasm for the sport, like on deck and through their workouts. All their workouts are extremely rewarding. They're really pushing for us to get back in the water and being really encouraging with our transition back. Because of course, like last year, we kind of all are trying to get back into shape because we haven't been swimming as much. Their pool access is kind of really limited. So for Merlot and Caitlin, and also Bill, of course, he's still a part of our crew, for them to be super encouraging and really working with us to make sure that we're building up at a pretty steady tempo instead of just getting right back into it has been really encouraging. I could definitely see like already within the first couple of weeks of us being back in the pool that we're all getting faster and we're all getting back our endurance. We're all getting our speed back. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what we can do this year with our new coaching.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it too. And part of any good leadership, like you said, with the 2 new coaches out of the 3 for your program, I think with returning student athletes, they can always help with that transition. And you're a captain, right? So describe what it's like to have a captaincy as a member of kind of like the student athlete side of the leadership. What's that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It almost feels brand new. See, we've got new head coach, we have a new assistant coach, and now that we also have captain leadership roles this year, it also feels like we're being a part of this new transition. So I feel like as a captain, it's been so much fun this year because this is my first year being a captain, and I've always remember being a underclassman thinking, I like looking up to my captains and really appreciating that the work that they've always done for us. And now that I actually get to be a part of this new team in a way and being able to make a good experience, hopefully for everyone, it's really making me happy.
Well, you're an absolute pleasure to have on campus. Obviously, highly competitive with an all-conference selection out of the gate your first year. I got to ask you about goals then, right? We're weeks away from first competition, right? What are your personal competitive goals for the upcoming season?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, like the baseline is just get back in shape. But however, of course, the bar always has to be elevated. So my huge goals for the end of this year, I would love to snatch those 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. records. I was super close to those my freshman year. If I could just work back up and hopefully get those, that'd be just the dream come true. And then our first competition is coming up like within the month. So yeah, just looking to throw down some fast times just to see where I'm at. We've been practicing a lot of race pace and lots of fast swimming in the pool. So hopefully those will translate at the meet, and I just want to get up and swim.
Yeah, we're looking at October 29th for the pentathlon, and the conference duel will start the first week of November. Eric Norman, we were supposed to have you last week. I ran some tech issues. You did a courtesy to me to reschedule to today. We really appreciate getting a chance to talk to you. And thanks so much for joining us on lcpioneers.com live.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, that was a fun interview. That was with Eric Norman last week. We like to try to bring you 2 guests per show, and in this situation had a chance to re-air Eric Norman's interview. We'll have Angelina Peterson coming up from women's soccer in about 5 minutes from now. And you look at the schedule for Lewis and Clark swimming, a lot of home meets late in the season. So you start off with, Linfield and Pacific that first weekend, then PLU, Whitworth, and Whitman. So maybe more of a middle-centered home schedule, even in spanning the early part of January. A lot of those races, those duels, will be held at Zembauer Swimming Pavilion on the campus of Lewis and Clark College. And then looking into the middle point of February, that's when they go to the Northwest Conference Championships. And it is unlike any other conference championships. The track and field championships are particularly festive as well, just because you have so much going on. The swimming meets, though, and one thing I never expected prior to getting an opportunity to be involved in collegiate athletics is just the speed by which a swimming event happens. You do 15 events at a duel, and it feels like it's going at a blink of an eye, right? Because it's just so fast. Every event is ready to go after the last event. Multiple heats can happen, and then before you know it, you're halfway to the end of the meet, right? And it just is it's fun chaos. And then the conference championship is that, but you have 9 teams in the building, right? Huge venue that hosts other conference championships at higher levels like the Pac-12 championships, right? This is a really cool venue up in Federal Way, Washington, and it was really cool to be a part of that when we had a chance to be the host institution for that last in February of 2020, last time that competition was held. So Angelina Peterson, as I mentioned, coming up. If you miss any of our shows, you can go to our website, lcpioneers.com, and check out all of our past shows. While you're there, of course, you can get the weekly schedule too. As I mentioned, Thursday home women's soccer, Friday home volleyball, and then Saturday home football and volleyball, in addition to the Northwest Conference Fall Classic that'll be happening for the women's and men's golf teams of Lewis and Clark as well. That's all coming up this weekend. So stick around. We'll come back with more of lcpioneers.com live. We'll talk to the senior for Lewis and Clark women's soccer, Angelina Peterson. It's all ahead on this edition of lcpioneers.com live, presented by PiosSWIM.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. Because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.
My favorite spot on campus is like right outside the Dovecote, little benches, and there's flowers growing there, and you can get a little coffee at the Dovecote and sit there.
My favorite spot on campus is definitely the weight room. I get that everybody loves like the gardens or the manor house, but our facilities for athletics here are actually amazing too, and the weight room is definitely my favorite spot.
My favorite spot on campus would either be the glade outside of the athletic facilities or South Campus.
What is my favorite spot on campus? I really like the back porch of the manor house. It looks out on Mount Hood, and on a clear day, it's super beautiful just to sit around with friends.
Welcome back to lcpioneers.com live, presented by PiosSWIM. We appreciate you being with us on this Thursday edition. It's been a lot of fun to have these shows and have a chance to keep you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and then different members from throughout the Lewis and Clark college community. And we'll continue to do that as the fall season goes. It started as a show that we decided to do to fill time during the pandemic because all competition had halted in March of 2020, and we wanted to find a way to continue to talk to all of our student athletes. And now that we're into a more non-pandemic type schedule, it's been fun to keep those conversations going. And that leads us into our next guest. We have a chance to talk to Lewis and Clark senior from the women's soccer team. Please welcome Angelina Peterson to the show. Thank you for getting from class all the way back home and getting ready for an interview to talk to us today. How have things been going from a class back to competition full-time kind of schedule in 2021?
Sure. Thanks for asking me to join. It's been good. It's definitely been a transition going back to fully in-person classes. But I think something that my 3 years and now my 4th year on the soccer team has taught me is really how to manage my time well. So I feel like I've definitely learned from my first 3 years on the team that I need to get my homework done anytime that I'm not in practice or traveling for games. So I feel like I've been well prepared to transition back.
And we always like to get the origin story, right? When a student athlete joins us on lcpioneers.com, there's always a reason that somebody joins us from wherever they came from. You obviously came from Utah. So what was it ultimately about the chance to compete at Lewis and Clark that made you pick the Pioneers?
Yeah, I was looking at different schools pretty much all over the United States, but I knew I wanted to play soccer. I was looking at a few larger schools, and then I kind of decided that the D3 model and the liberal arts education model was what I was looking for, with smaller class sizes and more intimate relationships with my professors. So I came and visited and did a tour with Jim, and I just fell in love with the campus, and I really enjoyed the opportunity for political and social activism that I felt was more alive in Portland than it is in Utah. But I was still going to be close enough to the mountains that I could feel somewhat at home. And yeah, I'm really happy to have the opportunity to compete on a varsity team and play soccer, but still have a really rich academic experience as well.
And we're going to talk about both academics, and we're going to get into some of the volunteerism that you have in your life. Obviously, senior year too, I'd love to hear kind of what's ahead for you. When I have people who come from other places, especially outside of the Pacific Northwest, because I grew up in Montana, right? So I kind of feel you in terms of like, this is a place that has some mountains, right? But then there's mountains in the Rocky Mountain region. And so I always like to see, how do you describe the Portland area, the Pacific Northwest to folks when you go home?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell them that it's pretty wild that I can get to the mountains and also get to the ocean, within like a 3-hour drive, because obviously in Utah, there's no access to the ocean, but we have plenty of access to mountain ranges. And, I tell them that the social and political climate is very different, but it's exactly what I was looking for in my transition out to Portland. So yeah, I mean, the rain doesn't really bother me. That's something that everyone asks me about. But I feel like the constant snow at home prepared me well.
Yeah, I will tell you the truth. I don't miss the snow in the least. That's one of my favorite things about being out here, but it is still odd to me when there is some snow and it's not Utah or Montana snow, that everything kind of shuts down, which is always a little bit bizarre. Let's talk a little bit about, athletics, women's soccer. When did you kind of have an inkling that soccer was something that you were going to enjoy for your lifetime, but also you kind of decided that, hey, this is something I'm pretty good at as well?
Gosh, I don't know. My dad played professional soccer, so it's been in my life since I was very young. I think I started playing on a rec team when I was like 3 or 4, and my dad coached me all throughout my youth career, and I was on some really successful teams in Utah, and we traveled to California and to the East Coast, to Canada, and we would play in like some international tournaments. And once we started to do really well there, I was kind of like, okay, wow, this is something that I am good at. And I started to meet a lot of college coaches when we were playing in those tournaments, especially in California. So once I started interacting with them, I kind of realized like there is an opportunity for me to pursue this beyond high school and beyond club, and that it was something that I really wanted to do after high school, because I just was not ready to stop playing soccer.
And kind of fortunate for us on this edition of the show, because we get to talk to you kind of on an upswing of success with the team right now. I mean, we're talking the last 5 wins have all been shutout victories. I'm curious, give me insight on how difficult it is to get a shutout victory in the conference, let alone to be able to do it 5 times in the last 5 games.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the strongest team I've been on since being at Lewis and Clark. I don't know if it's because coming off of our COVID season where we didn't really get to have any like team bonding activities or do much together outside of soccer. So we've had like a big emphasis on spending time with each other outside of our games and practices. So I think we're a really tight-knit team this year, which has been really nice. And I think that plays into getting a shutout in our conference. Like, it's the entire team from the forwards, like Celeste and Elsa up top, shutting down their defense and not allowing their the ball to get into our defensive third, and then the midfielders and wings working together to hold the middle of the park down. And we have a really, really strong defensive group this year. We have our captains as center backs, and then we also have some really, really strong freshmen and sophomore players who have like really stepped into leadership roles in the defense. And then, I mean, we have 2 incredible goalkeepers who obviously play a major role in getting a shutout. So I'm excited for both of our keepers this year. They've both had really great seasons.
Talking to Angelina Peterson on lcpioneers.com live, presented by PiosSWIM. And Celeste Rifles was named Northwest Conference Offensive Women's Soccer Student Athlete of the Week by the conference. Sophia Young was certainly in contention, right, with the strong defensive performance that she had over the weekend. Let's shift into academic programs and talk a little bit about your studies. What is your academic program, your major that you've chosen, and what was it that kind of made you hone in on that?
Yeah, I'm a sociology, cultural anthropology major, and then I'm an ethnic studies minor. So I started out as a history major when I first came to Lewis and Clark, but I just wasn't quite getting exactly what I wanted from it. And I took an intro to sociology class, and it just was like everything that I was wanting from the history program. It's really just an incredible way to examine social and cultural issues that have plagued the United States and other countries since like the beginning of society and culture. And I think it's a really cool major because there's so many different routes you can take with sociology and cultural anthropology. And since it's meshed, you really get the best of both worlds with sociology and anthropology because they are different approaches to research and writing. So I'm really happy that I've gotten to learn sociological ways of researching and anthropological. And I think that the SOAN major has helped me become a writer that I would not have become outside of this major. And I think the research skills I've gained will help me far beyond Lewis and Clark.
And we've heard you a couple of times just in this interview talk about activism, right? Why is that such a big priority for you? When did you kind of realize that that was something that you wanted to make sure you emphasize in your life?
Yeah, I think growing up in Utah, it's obviously it's a well-known fact that it's a pretty conservative state. And I think I was expressing views in the classroom in high school that not many of my peers shared. So I really had to, make sure that what I was expressing was fact-based and that I could express myself clearly and concisely, and I really knew what I was arguing for. And in Utah, I think maybe my senior year or my junior year was when I started to get more into political activism and organizing rallies. And I kind of just found my community there through environmental activism and political activism. And it really led me to a great group of people there. And the opportunity to continue that at Lewis and Clark is definitely something that drew me to come here.
And you talked about the opportunities, right? And one thing that I've noticed talking to student athletes on the show, and obviously in general, is there's the athletic side of being a student athlete. There's just the straight up academic side, but then there's all the other opportunities in terms of clubs and organizations to get involved with at Lewis and Clark. You are a big part of the Feminist Student Union. Describe that group to us for those who aren't familiar, and what are some of the things that you enjoy most about that experience so far?
Yeah, the Feminist Student Union does a lot of different things. I think one of the main things we do is provide sexual health resources that aren't offered otherwise on campus. So we offer free pregnancy tests, condoms, lube. Plan B, we were able to get a grant last year to offer subsidized STD testing for low-income students. I'm also a sexual assault peer advocate, and one of the main things that we offer is the training to become. It's called a SAPA trained person. It's sexual assault peer advocacy. So we host office hours where people can come in and speak to us about experiences of assault or sexual assault. And we do not have to report instances. So we're one of the only non-mandatory reporters on campus. So I think to me, being a SAPA trained person is like the most important thing that I have gained through the Feminist Student Union. But we've also created a really great community around the events that we host. Like we had someone from Planned Parenthood come in and talk about the resources that they offer. And we're working on getting like a carpool network to different pharmacies to get birth control or like hormone treatment access, and carpools to different Planned Parenthoods around Portland. And I think something that we're really trying to work on is making our space a more intersectional space so that people who of all identities and races and ethnicities and sexual orientations feel welcome in our space. So it's been really cool to work with other unions like the Black Student Union or organizations like KLC, our radio station, to put on events that really include a wide range of students.
And to find out more about FSU, you can go to the website. I had it pulled up actually right here. Just type in Feminist Student Union, L. Clark, in Google, right? And you can find this website here and check that out. Angelina Peterson, you also gave us some information prior to the show about She Jumps, and that's a place where you volunteer. Tell us more about them.
Yeah, so I'm a part-time volunteer for She Jumps. It's a nonprofit that was actually started by Lewis and Clark alumni, which was a fun fact that I found out after joining them. They work to provide scholarships and different opportunities for women and girls and non-binary people to be able to be more involved in outdoor activities. There's a specific focus on Black and Indigenous women of color because traditionally that is a group of people who are not able to access adventure and outdoor sports as easily because they are very expensive, the gear is expensive, the knowledge that you need is typically passed down through generations, and outdoor sports are a heavily whitewashed arena right now. So it's been a really cool experience. I'm hoping to put on a fly fishing clinic once soccer is over. And we provide, scholarships for people to pay for gear or to pay for like ARE1 classes, which is an avalanche certification that you need to go backcountry skiing. We do like hut trips for skiing, rock climbing trips. We do a lot of virtual events. Everything kind of changed once COVID happened, so we shifted our gear towards more virtual events. So things like getting into hiking, or like what's the difference between hiking and walking? What do you need to go backpacking, or like bike packing 101? And it's been a really, really cool opportunity to kind of find my outdoor community in Portland and to meet people outside of Lewis and Clark who are interested in the same outdoor activities I am, but then also be able to give back to that community and bring a wider range of people in to something that I love so much.
Well, and thank you for that work. And certainly I've had conversations with other folks on this campus about that same idea, cost prohibitive recreation and opportunities. So to hear that you're helping find ways to help fund and break down some of those barriers is really neat. This has been a ton of fun. You have home soccer on Thursday, and then you travel up to Puget Sound, which is always a tough game, up in Tacoma. What are you looking forward to most with the rest of your 2021 soccer season?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a difficult season looking forward just because I know it's my last few games of playing competitive soccer for the rest of my life. So I'm just really excited to be able to go out and play. And I really love my team this year. I mean, I love them every year, but it's been really, really fun to play with the team that we have this year. So I'm excited to build off the momentum we have and hopefully carry that through the rest of the season. Because, this has been one of the best seasons we've had while I've been at Lewis and Clark. So love to finish my career out on a strong note.
Yeah, and we saw some of the Instagram posts that your team shares out. Be sure to follow women's soccer, LC PiosWSOC on Instagram. Angelina Peterson, thank you so much for your time today on lcpioneers.com Live.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. A really fun interview. And with Eric Norman last week and then having the re-air prior to Angelina on the show, really love this element of the show because you get the layers, right, of the student experience and all the great work that people do. And it's neat to hear that story, right, about finding a place that you maybe weren't finding in your home, right, and being able to come out to Portland and find a new place to do the kind of things that were important. That was a really cool story from Angelina, and I'm thankful that she shared that on the show today. And that's, of course, where you can find all of our old shows. Go to lcpioneers.com. Check out this week's schedule, of course, but if you go to lcpioneers.com/lcpioslive or just click in the fan zone to lcpioneers.com live, you'll find all of our old shows. And these are the kind of things that we've had a chance to talk about over the course of 18 months now, dating back to March 2020 when the pandemic had started. It's really been a pleasure to bring you this show. And we found a lot of folks watching after the fact, not with us live, but we've seen a lot of views on our YouTube page. And now that we are on Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and YouTube. We certainly appreciate taking the time to join us. And we'll be back on Thursday with another edition of the show as well. So be sure to check it out. You can stay connected with us both through the chat, but also through our email address, sports@lclark.edu. We'll also have more news coming up on Thursday about next week's homecoming and family weekend. That'll include the Hall of Fame induction dinner on Friday and then the homecoming football game on Saturday, the 22nd and 23rd, respectively. Be sure to reach out to us, sports@lclark.edu. So for Eric Norman, who joined us last week, and certainly for Angelina Peterson joining us in this edition of the show, I'm Ryan Goff. Thank you for having fun with us. We'll see you again on Thursday for more lcpioneers.com live, presented by PiosStream. Goodbye, everybody.
I think everyone should take Intro to Chemistry because the chemistry department here is phenomenal. Everyone I've known has had a good experience with everyone in that department, so I think it's a worthwhile course to take.
What is one class that everyone should take at Lewis and Clark? I really enjoyed Education in a Complex World. You kind of get to discuss all the issues that exist within education today, and you get to kind of explore that by going to classrooms firsthand and volunteering with children, which I thought was a really wonderful experience.
One class that everybody should take at Lewis and Clark is anything with Kundai Chirindo. I think he definitely changed how I thought about rhetoric and media studies and just education in general.
For me, it was International Affairs, just Intro to International Affairs, because I think it really gives a good perspective on important issues around the world.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. Because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.